Let me start over. My mic was off. Thank you all for being here. I listened to all of you with great interest. Professor, do you believe that people respond to incentives?
Thank you, Senator. I do believe that people respond to incentives.
Do you believe that what you allow is what will continue?
I suppose I do.
Okay. I listened to all of you talk about enhancing affirmative disclosure requirements, strengthening the presumption of disclosure. I listened to you talk about consultants. I listened to you talking about the need for a public interest balancing test. But those can be ignored just as easily as every other part of the statute. Why don't you just create personal liability for the person responsible for turning over the documents?
Welcome back, Patriots, to Right View Nation. If you're sick and tired of watching bureaucrats stonewall the American people while we foot the bill, then buckle up, because today's video is going to fire you up. Senator John Kennedy just grilled government witnesses in a hearing about FOIA, that's the Freedom of Information Act, and he nailed a point we've all been screaming for years. Hold these people personally responsible. Not just slap the agency with fines we end up paying, but go after the individuals who break the law and betray the public trust. Let's dive right in.
Certainly, Senator. There are systems, other jurisdictions around the world that do have, in fact, personal penalties for government officials.
Do you recommend it for us?
I don't think that we're at the point where we necessarily have to take such a step in order to drastically change the incentives that agencies.
Why not? I mean, all administrations stall and restall in turning over documents to the American people, don't they? Does anybody disagree with that? It's not a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. It's an executive branch thing, isn't it?
It absolutely is. I do not disagree with that. It is.
So why don't we hold the people responsible, personally responsible? I'm not saying not afford them due process. You may want to require bad faith with a reasonable, not an impossible definition of bad faith. I mean, if you want to solve this problem, why don't you just create personal liability, Mr. Howell?
I think that's a terrific idea. Right now, the mechanism to have liability is basically an attorney's fees, and those are rarely given out. So the government really is never forced to pony up.
Well, the employees don't care if the government gets hit with attorney's fees, do they?
Correct. And that's why the Department of Justice is willing to tolerate us suing them 100 times, because we all pay for their lawyers.
Look, we can write and rewrite statutes all we want to. But it is clear that people in the government are not responding to Freedom of Information Act requests in bad faith. Sometimes they need more time, but I'm talking about in bad faith. That's clear. And it happens on both sides. So instead of just rewriting new laws and new rules that they're going to ignore, why don't you just hold people personally responsible? What about it, Doctor?
I actually fully agree, and I would point out that there's a mechanism in the FOIA statute currently where if it turns out that there's evidence of an agency or an agency employee intentionally withholding documents without a reasonable basis, a judge could, in issuing that order, make that finding.
And when's the last time that happened?
Almost never.
Yeah, it hasn't happened in the history of ever, has it?
Yeah,
No.
Yeah,
and
that's
until
right.
Congress makes it very clear that we're serious about this, we're going to be equal opportunity pit bulls here and say, regardless of who is running the executive branch, you have an affirmative obligation to turn over documents. And if you don't do it, you're going to be personally liable. That's going to work, isn't it?
Well, I would hope so. Of course, as you know, as a former law professor, there are issues with, the executive branch claiming immunity for
I'm
these
not saying
employees.
deny them due process.
Right.
I'm not saying an ordinary negligent standard. I am saying that if some person is being an obstructionist and you can prove it, they ought to be held personally liable. We wouldn't have to do it for long.
Senator Whitehouse.
I still had 9 seconds left.
Proceed.
No, I yield my back.
Sir.
But I do want to say Professor Whitehouse has some interesting thoughts about enforcing orders that he and I have talked about. So I'm going to listen to him carefully here.
Senator Whitehouse.
Senator Kennedy has predicted my line of questioning. I know that we're here to talk about FOIA, but at least in theory, congressional...
All right, so here's the deal. FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, is supposed to guarantee that we the people can access government records, transparency, accountability, basic American principles. But what Senator Kennedy exposed, and what all of us already knew, is that both Democrat and Republican administrations have been dragging their feet, stalling, and straight up ignoring FOIA requests. Not because they're overwhelmed, no, because they can. There's no real punishment. Kennedy asked a simple question. Why don't you just hold the individuals personally responsible? And guess what? Even the liberal witnesses, those usually ready with an excuse, couldn't disagree. They admitted it. Right now, the worst that happens is maybe a lawsuit. Government pays the fine. No skin off the bureaucrats' back. And guess who's paying? You and me, the taxpayers. This is the deep state at work, friends. Unaccountable, unbothered, unapologetic. They sit there, thumbing their noses at the law, at the American people, because they know nothing will happen to them personally. No job loss, no fine, no jail time. Nothing. And Senator Kennedy is absolutely right. If someone intentionally stonewalls and hides documents, prove it, and then hold them accountable. Personal liability. Take it to their wallets, their careers. You'll see compliance happen real fast. Because let me tell you, when your paycheck, your pension, and your personal reputation are on the line, suddenly those FOIA requests get answered real quick. And don't let the left fool you, patriots. This isn't a partisan issue. Kennedy made it clear. It's an executive branch disease. Doesn't matter if it's Obama, Trump, Biden, or whoever next. The bureaucracy defends itself, not the Constitution. And right now, the only ones suffering for their arrogance are U.S., the citizens who were promised a government that serves, not rules over us. So where do we go from here? First, Congress needs to pass laws that hold individuals accountable for intentional FOIA violations. No more hiding behind the agency. No more endless lawsuits paid for by tax dollars. Second, we need judges with backbone, willing to call out bad faith when they see it. Third, and most importantly, we need to stay loud. Patriots, FOIA is one of our tools for freedom. It's how we expose corruption, how we uncover lies. Without it, we are flying blind. You think the Russia hoax, Hunter Biden's laptop, January 6th footage, any of it would ever come to light without FOIA and transparency lawsuits? Think again. And guess what? The people who fear transparency are the ones who have something to hide. That's why they're fighting so hard to keep FOIA weak. That's why they stall. That's why they pray we stop paying attention. But here on Right View Nation, we're not stopping. We're not looking away. And we will hold them accountable, with voices loud enough to shake the halls of Congress. If you're as fired up as I am, smash that like button, share this video with every freedom-loving American you know, and drop a comment down below. Should government employees be personally responsible for violating FOIA? And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and join the movement. We are the tip of the spear for American values, and we're just getting started. Until next time, stay proud, stay free, and stay ready. Because freedom needs fighters like you. God bless America, and God bless all of you.